Fight HIV, and it's for a reason. This is a fight that requires each and every one of us to participate and actively work toward ushering in an AIDS-free generation. Did an interview with our hosts this evening, both Jessica and Nicole, and one of the things that they said is that we are working towards an AIDS-free generation. Get your mind around that. That is possible. That is possible. When I look around at the worker bees in this room, I know how hard you all are at it. You all are working the trenches, you going. It's possible. I'm pleased to welcome some of the honored guests this evening, former Heart of United Way, CEO Bob Brown. Bob Brown, okay, that's all right. Current Heart of Florida United Way Senior VP, Jill Grevy, and I may not say it right, but Jill Grevy. Did I say that right, Jill? Grevy. Jill, stand up. Yeah, stand up, Jill. Yeah, Jill. Barbara Poma. Okay, she hasn't gotten here yet. She's a diva. We'll wait. We'll wait. We'll wait. We'll know when she has arrived, okay? And I also wanted to just say hello to some folks that I do know. Dr. Kevin Sharon, he is the health officer of the Orange County Health Department. From the Miracle of Love, I saw him come in, Angus Bradshaw. From Hope and Help, Lisa Barr. Stand up, Lisa. From Florida Hospital, the pediatric, she is a pharmacist there. I just wanted to welcome Dr. Andrea Dunn. Now, these are the people I know, and also Black Nurses Rock. You ladies do rock. Thank you very much. I want to do a little disclaimer really quickly. USCA Orlando does not endorse any political candidates or its affiliates. Gotta say that. And actually, it's written in the very smallest print that you could ever see that I can't see. That's what made me go get my glasses. And they said, you have to say that. And I said, but I can't see that. So I need to say it. So I had to kind of commit that one to memory. With that being said, let me introduce you to your panel. I'm going to go, I'll start at the very, very, very end, all the way to the left, your right. Eric Rawlings, yay! Yay! He's a public servant. He's a volunteer. Rawlings serves as Orange County Soil and Water District Chair. He's running to serve as Orange County Commissioner, seat number 3. He has a long history of advocating for HIV through his volunteer work with Hope and Help, and he continues to advocate for environmental sustainability and affordable housing. If elected, or just say when elected, Rawlings would be the first openly gay county commissioner. Family, let's welcome Eric to our panel table.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you.
My sister Patty Sheehan. She's the commissioner, the first openly gay elected official here in Central Florida, and she has been proudly serving the city beautiful since 2000. That's 18 years as a public servant. She's well known throughout her district, which is District 4, for her advocacy of pedestrian safety, safe neighborhoods, historic preservation, a thriving downtown, and a huge proponent of the arts and culture here in Orlando. Commissioner Sheehan is a local artist. Patty. You can find her bad kitty paintings all throughout Orlando. Y'all ever seen one of her? Okay. Did you bring any tonight?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I got another hat on tonight.
Okay, all right, so we'll stay focused, all right. Yep. Anna Eskamani is a proud Orlando native. Anna, Iranian-American and feminist. She's running for Florida House, the District 47 seat. Anna is known across the state as an advocate for women's health and equality. She was recently featured. Did you see the Time magazine cover? That's our Anna.
Thank you.
And the cover was to celebrate her run for office. Now, we're not endorsing any political candidates. I need to just throw that in one more time. And he is last but not least, Representative Carlos Guillermo-Smith. He is a proud, progressive, liberal, feminist, gay, Latinx, Democratic, political leader. Yes. Representing Florida House District 47. Carlos is a huge 49. Where's my pen? That's what happens when you don't. That makes better sense, 49. Carlos is a huge PrEP and HIV advocate, and he was awarded the annual Legislative Leadership Award for his advocacy by the Elizabeth Taylor AIDS Foundation at the 2018 AIDS Watch. This is our esteemed panel, ladies and gentlemen. And I want to start with Carlos because we have dialogue often and we've never had an opportunity to be on a panel. Actually, I see them always. Eric I've interviewed with before, but other than that, Patty, Anna, never. Yeah. Okay, we got to change that. I want to start with you, though, and just ask a question. Why is this epidemic so important to you?
Well, look, HIV is something that has touched everyone in this room. That's why you're here, because you understand exactly what the stakes are for our communities. The question being, why is it important to me personally? Well, because, of course, as you mentioned earlier, Monica, we are racial, economic, and social and reproductive justice advocates. And HIV is all of those issues. But it also impacts our communities disproportionately. Mm-hmm. I identify as a queer Latinx individual, and HIV is something that disproportionately impacts Latino men. 32% of the new transmissions in Florida is affecting Latinos. 42% of those new transmissions impact Black and African American individuals. And we also know, of course, that that disproportionately impacts also the LGBTQ community. So to be authentic and real advocates for the communities and constituencies we represent, we have to be leaders on the issue of HIV. Personally, I'm someone who has taken every opportunity that I could as a public servant, as an elected official, to talk about how I have been on PrEP before for more than a year and a half, because as Nicole mentioned before, it's important to normalize not only people living in mixed status relationships, but normalize being on PrEP and helping to educate the public about what PrEP even is. Mm-hmm. When I was elected to the Florida legislature in 2016, I could probably name 5 out of 160 lawmakers who even knew what PrEP was. Yeah. Yeah. And that it was something that was available. Now, luckily, we've been taking baby steps as a state, painfully slow steps towards progress, but PrEP is now something that is free, available through the Florida Department of Health, and that's a major step forward. And Dr. Sheehan has been a major advocate for that, and that's absolutely a good thing. And for me, you know, I'm personally impacted by HIV. One of my former partners was someone who was living with HIV, and my prevention strategy, part of that prevention strategy was researching what medication was available, understanding whether PrEP was right for me and something that I needed to start taking. And as a result, I educated myself and became a more serious advocate for these issues. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Anna, I want to ask you the same question. Mm-hmm. What makes this so important for you?
Thank you, Monica. Well, first of all, it's incredible to be here among family. And so thank you so much to our host committee for bringing us all together as we prepare to welcome over 3,000 people to Orlando.
Isn't that amazing?
It's incredible. And I don't think there's any other town that can solve these complex problems like Orlando. And so to echo Representative Guillermo-Smith, I mean, this is personal for every single one of us. You know, we have been impacted to some degree with HIV in our community, and I won't even have to read the stats on the new cases, 'cause I know many folks in this space are experts in that work, and you know that Orlando's rates are too high, and that people are also dying. And I think that's one reason why it's so personal for me is many folks here know that I worked at Planned Parenthood for 6 years. And so, thank you. Thanks, Rep. And I consider myself to be a cisgender heterosexual woman of color, and I'm not just an ally to the LGBT community, I'm an accomplice. And by that I mean, like, I'm in it through thick and thin. I never leave your side, even when things get tough. And so when it comes to the stigma that surrounds HIV, we felt that every day at Planned Parenthood, and Planned Parenthood is a partner when it comes to doing our best to work together to reduce transmissions and support those who live a positive life. And I will never forget just the lack of information in the legislature, the stigma in our communities, and also I want to elevate the cultural disparities and the systematic disparities to accessing care, because we also know that there's a deep distrust to medical institutions historically. And reproductive health as an example. I mean, we know that birth control was tested on Puerto Rican women. We know that there was forced sterilization of Native American women. We know that the body of slaves was used for experimentation in medicine. Like, there's a lot of work we have to do as a community to overcome these cultural barriers to ensure that everyone can live a happy and healthy life. And to echo the point already made by Nicole and Carlos, this is a social justice issue, it's an economic issue, and I want to do my part to break those barriers every single day, and part of that is us talking about it and through story sharing, but at the end of the day, there are too many people dying to HIV that it should be preventable in the sense that you can live with HIV, and I don't even think that we've overcome the stigma to that reality, right? And of course, the impact of PrEP and PEP are things that excite me every day, and I want to make sure that every Floridian knows that this is available to them.
Thank you. I will also add or just interject that with Planned Parenthood, there's a humongous stigma in the African American community for what that even began as.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So getting over that really is something that we need to work on as well.
And the role of sexual health education, all this too, right? And trying to integrate education around reproductive health and HIV prevention in our schools in an age-appropriate, evidence-based way is also going to be life-changing. And that's one reason why for me it's so personal is that I know that, you know, if from a political standpoint, if people really were serious of saving lives and reducing the rate of HIV and let's just say it, even abortion on issues of reproductive health, because guess what? There are moms out there that have HIV, that are giving birth, and moms who are also choosing to end pregnancies who have HIV. And these are the realities of Floridians across this great state, and we have to be courageous in talking about it, but at the end of the day, it's about access. Do they have a clinic close to them? Do they have a car to get there? Is there public transit? Like, we know that HIV prevention and living a life that's positive with HIV means so many other intersectional layers that we have to address as policymakers. And it takes a collaboration to solve these problems.
That is good, and I'm glad you brought up that term intersectional. What are your goals for the future of HIV, Patty, as you would see it?
I'd actually like to answer the first question if I could.
Okay, I was just trying to flip it around. I was going to get back to you on that, but go ahead.
Gotcha. When I was a sexually active wild child in the 80s.
That's why she wanted to.
I had to get that. I had to get that off my chest. But and I remember, in that time, the only way we could communicate was through our newsletters and newspapers that were available through the bar. And I remember reading about something called gay-related immune deficiency disorder. And we were all really freaked out. What is this? And then our friends started getting sick, and our friends started to die. And I know people don't like to hear the history of a lot because it was a terrible time, and it was a terrifying time. I lost half my friends between the age of 25 and 30. And it got so bad by the time, I knew Chuck Hummer, by the time Chuck died, I was so depressed I just could not go to one more funeral. It had gotten so bad. So as your elder stateswoman, I will always have a sense of urgency about this because I saw way too many of my friends die. I remember when I went to the first March on Washington, and we had all of these men who were sick, and they were all at the front, and I knew that they would never, ever come to another march or another demonstration. And I remember when they poured the blood on the steps of the Supreme Court, because they were just trying to get someone to listen to them because they were dying, and it was an act up, and everybody was trying to get attention. And the fact that now it's a chronic disease that you can survive, I'm so happy to have seen that, but I'm distressed that we're number 5. It seems like, we trying to do education about condoms and it hasn't worked. So I'm delighted to see PrEP. But I gotta tell you, we have got to do something, if it's PrEP, if it's condoms, whatever it is, but we have got to try to get to 0. I'm so frustrated. I've been doing this for 30 years. And I would like for us to see us make some progress. And, as a city commissioner, I get to work on housing housing of people with AIDS and making sure that people are taken care of, because I remember when my friends had nowhere to go, and the drag queens got sick first. And everybody had to take them in because they had no one to take care of them. So I will always have that sense of urgency because I remember what that was like. And even though I feel, I'm happier that we have more things available to us to help people cope in terms of housing, in terms of medicine, in terms of education, I still am distressed at how we haven't gotten to 0. And we need to get to 0, and we need to get tested, and we need to do that I can't say that enough, over and over again. Get tested, get tested, get tested, know your status.
Amen,
That's the most
amen,
important thing.
amen.
And girlfriend, I had to say that.
Yeah, no, you're right. When you mention our transgender community here, Sasha Garden
Yeah.
just murdered recently. And what makes that so sad is that our own sheriff's office didn't even know how to relate.
Right.
What do we call her? I mean, that's significant. It's significant because in 2018, you don't know?
But Monica, I want to say something about that, though. I mean, I got to tell you something about the Orlando Police Department that I'm very proud of, is we have a cultural competency training. Officer Jim Young, actually is Captain Jim Young now, he's been very successful at the Orlando Police Department. He actually brought, from Gay Officers Action League, sensitivity training to the city of Orlando, and we have been doing that cultural competency training. And that's the reason why you would not have seen that out of OPD. And I have to tell you, that would have not happened under John Meena's watch.
There you go.
Even though I'm not supposed to be advocating for candidates, whatever.
Well, then would you share that part with them? Because they certainly need it.
Yes, and
that was
actually,
very
I did have a
obvious.
conversation with the current leadership of the Sheriff's Office, and they did do an apology.
They did.
And they were embarrassed.
They were.
Yes, and they should have been. But again, there's a reason why cultural competency is so important. And you know what? I'm so proud of the Orlando Police Department. We will ask if and Jim makes it funny. He actually does this training in the police department. He said, if you see a man in a wig, and you need to address her as she.
Yes.
If she's in a wig, even though it's a man, and Jim does this training with these folks at the police department. And not everybody at the police department's the most gay-friendly at first. But if you make them comfortable and let them understand what's happening, I have seen a tremendous shift in the organization. And I think when you educate people, they do respond well to that. There's going to be some jerks no matter what you try to do. I mean, we have some, like any organization, we have our problem people. But I'm very proud of the Orlando Police Department. I know that wouldn't have happened with us. I'm glad there was an apology, and I think it's a teachable moment.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Eric, We're going to go back, since Patty said we need to keep with that question, we will stay with the first question.
Okay.
Why is the epidemic important to you?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you very much for inviting all of us up here tonight to have this panel. And I want to thank you, Monica, for all the stuff that you do in all different communities. The last time I was on your radio show was when we were doing Sunshine for Flint, when we were sending relief efforts to the Flint water crisis. So thank you. The question, it's very, very personal. I was dating a guy named Chris, and we both went and got tested. I came back negative, and he came back positive. And that was a long time ago, and he was scared. He was scared, and it was a death sentence for a lot of people. And so he went back to Michigan to figure out what he was going to do with the rest of his life and be close to his family. And he wanted me to go with him. I was like, I just moved here from Michigan. I don't want to go back up in that cold. But I remained friends with Chris, and I sent him money to, at that time, there was only AZT. And he would never cash the checks. And so I said, there has got to be someone down here that would appreciate help. And that's when I fell in love with Hope and Help. And I met Chuck Hummer and John Sarah and Keith and Mark. None of them are with us today. And I would do phone calls every Tuesday and Thursday. And so I got to hear how scared some people were. And then through Hope and Help, I did HIV education for the juvenile delinquents at 33rd Street. I did community outreach, where at that time, sometimes you would have different addresses, and you would go and check on people and sit with them if there was anything that they needed. And sometimes you'd go and you'd get to the house, and everything that they owned was on the front lawn and being thrown away, because not even their parents, not even their family wanted anything to do with them, and they died alone. And in 1992, it was the Volunteer of the Year Award for Hope and Help, and then I chaired Headdress in '94, and it was amazing to see all the different dynamics. And it's just not Hope and Help, it's Miracle of Love, and it's the center. And you know, what a lot of things that are bad, so many good things come out of it. And I lost, with Patty, I lost 14 friends in 1 year. And that's tough. And you know, you can go either way. You can just not deal with it, or deal with it head on and try to make Orlando a better place for everybody. And some of the very longest friendships that I have were through working together to do testing. Back in the day, we had to wait for a very long time, and that was a lot of stress. So and then you know, after a while, when the medication started getting better and people stopped dying, it's nice to see that we've had so many positive changes. But just like everybody else was saying up here, that I think that a lot of times if you don't see that death, then I think that people continue on and having risky behavior. And I think that that's why we see 12,000 HIV cases in Central Florida. And I hope that PrEP is a game changer. But like we were talking about with the stigma, that we absolutely have to have that communication and that conversation. Because if it's not on the forefront, then it's kind of just tucked back away. So thank you again for having us here.
Thank them all, first of all, for sharing their stories. So we're gonna move through this with the second question. And Anna, what are your goals for the future of HIV?
I got a list, because it is it is extensive. And actually, as I was listening to Eric and Commissioner Sheehan share their personal stories too, it does make me think about some of our most marginalized communities today, especially under the political climate. And we have we have members of our community that are too scared to call for help. They are too scared to walk into the Department of Health, into a hospital. I'm talking about folks who are undocumented. I'm talking about members of the transgender community. I'm talking about our sex workers. We have members of our community that deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, and they're fearful to access these services that can always save their life and make life better for their family. And so for me, I want to make sure that every person in this state, no matter who you love, who you worship, how much money you make, what your zip code is, what your documentation status is, what your disability status is, that you're going to be able to access the resources that we've talked about. You're going to be able to get tested. You're going to know where to get tested and understand the entire process and be able to bring your friends, you know, get yourself tested month every year and be part of that culture that many of us here embrace and celebrate and honor. You're going to be able to access PrEP and PEP whenever you need it. Condoms, barrier methods, internal or external. Like, I want to create that world where these are not taboo conversations. And you know, I try really hard never to call anything a tough conversation. I use the word courageous instead. And it takes a lot of courage for us as a community to look in our own backyard and say, we got a lot of work to do, right? And so to that point, decriminalization is something else that's really important to me. And I'll let Rep. Smith talk to it, because I know you've done work in legislature on it too, so I won't dive too deep into it, but I think it is really important that we remove to remove the stigma means to eliminate the archaic policy of those living with HIV being criminalized for it. And so that's a policy shift that I want to see happen as well. So I'll pass it down to the next person, but just a little bit of my vision for what the future should look like.
Well, thank you very much, because that was a great segue. Carlos, we did talk about the decriminalization that needs to take place, and so let's start that conversation.
So thank you, Monica, and thank you for starting that part of the conversation, Anna. You know, the underlying question still is, what are our goals for HIV? So I just want to tell you more broadly, and actually also very specifically, I'm a state lawmaker. I serve in the Florida legislature in Tallahassee. So what my goals are for HIV is, how can I make an impact in the Florida legislature on the state level to really change the epidemic that is currently happening in the state of Florida? Well, first we need to continue expanding PrEP and PEP and make sure that people are educated about it. We need more needle exchange programs in Florida. There's only one authorized needle exchange program that exists down at the University of Miami, and the only reason we were able to even pass it was because they had to doubly, triply, quadruply promise that we weren't using a single dime of taxpayer money to do it. I'd like to bring a needle exchange program to Central Florida so that we can curb new HIV transmissions. We need age-appropriate and evidence-based sexual education in our public schools. We also need to offer more robust services for people who are living with HIV. You know, think about, I have a lot of friends who used to live in New York, and they compare their Florida experience living with HIV to what it was like in Florida, or I'm sorry, what it was like in New York or California, where they had access to affordable housing, they had access to all types of other services and subsidized medication. Florida needs to be on par with states like California and New York, because we're dealing with the epidemic on the same level, so we should treat it as seriously as they do. And last but certainly not least, the conversation around criminalization of HIV. Now, I like to say, when we're talking about this issue, I like to call it HIV modernization, modernizing our laws, because when we say that we want to decriminalize HIV status outside of this room, that gets a lot of people nervous. They don't understand exactly what that means. But here's what it means in the state of Florida. In the state of Florida, you can serve up to 30 years in prison. 30 years. If you are living with HIV and you do not disclose your status to your sexual partner before contact, regardless of the level of risk, regardless if you're undetectable, regardless if transmission does not take place, that law needs to be modernized, because we're one of 32 states that has HIV-specific criminalization laws and it is stigmatizing. And the reason we're modernizing it is we're modernizing it to be up to date with the modern science of HIV. The current criminalization law does not consider the level of risk at all. The current criminalization law doesn't take into account what we know about U equals U. Undetectable equals untransmittable. The public needs to understand that. If you have an undetectable viral load, it is impossible to transmit that to your partner. It is impossible, scientifically impossible. So if we all come together around one issue, if you come and visit me in the Florida Capitol, it is absolutely around modernizing those HIV laws, because that stigma and that fear around knowing what your status is and knowing that you can be criminalized for it is also preventing people from stepping forward and getting tested and knowing their status.
So then we have the conversation about, shouldn't you, though, be able to disclose? But again, with the stigma, you're caught with your back against the wall. These are things that we need to change. Eric, what about your future? What do you want to do about the future of HIV?
Well, the very first thing I would do is I would vote for a governor that would have our back on this issue. Well, so let's start there. That's an easy fix, and it's coming up. But we're not endorsing it.
I was just getting ready to throw that back in there.
All right. As county commissioner, when I win, I noticed that on some of the, we can expand the service areas and be more specific to certain races, especially the Latino community in the eastern part of the county. That area is not served very well, and I think that adding additional county services, also making sure that the county services have everything that they need. I've got a friend that uses county services to manage his HIV, and the wait times can be long to get an appointment, and also the hours are limited. So I would like to see expansion of that, so it's easier on the client, especially when they are having to go to work and doing the other day-to-day life stuff, and instead of making it so narrow, expand those services in the county.
Thank you very much. Commissioner?
I want to get out of the top 10 for HIV transmissions. I like being on the top 10 list usually, but I hate being on this top 10. I hate being in the top 5 for this. So that would be my goal. And I would just like to give a shout out to the Gay Community Center that's been doing this work for over 30 years, working with, 40 years, yeah, the center. A lot of people wonder, why do we need brick and mortar centers, in this day and age of, and organizations in this day and age of social media? Well, the bottom line is because they provide very important services. And shout out to the center. Y'all do amazing work. You've done amazing work for years and done it in many times a thankless way. So thank you, shout out to you, to Hope and Help, to all the organizations who've been doing this work, to the health department, we finally have a health department that we can talk about this stuff now. That's a breath of fresh air. Absolutely, Dr. Sheehan. I got to tell you, yeah, I remember when people wouldn't talk about the health department, so thank you to that. And meeting new friends like where are my Black Nurses Rock at? I'm glad to see that, in community that we are coming together, and that's something that I'm delighted to see. So, again, my goal is to get to 0. It's a lofty goal. I'm always going to reach for the stars. And that's what I'd like to see.
So as we are getting ready for the most phenomenal conference to hit our state in a long time, the 22nd Annual Conference on AIDS, the U.S. Conference on AIDS, I'm going to ask you, Commissioner Sheehan, what do you want people to know about Orlando by the end of the conference?
Well, I think that by going through the most difficult time in our city's history, which was the Pulse Massacre, and we had the nation's attention, what I really wanted to talk about was what a loving, together, united community that we really are. And we showed that. I mean, we showed the world that. And, that a terrorist attack could not, even though it broke our hearts, it did not break our spirit. And I think that a lot of people saw a part of Orlando they had never seen before, and I think part of my job was to educate people and say, this is 3 miles from our city hall. This is a neighborhood where people live, and to show that Orlando's not, we love our theme parks, they're awesome, but that's a lot of times that's all people see, and they don't see the communities behind, you know, a city like ours, a very diverse and thriving and wonderful community that we have. So my desire is for people to come here and see more than Mickey Mouse, even though we love Mickey Mouse, is to see what a great community that we really are. And even though, you know, I'm not proud of our number 5 moniker, that we're committed to helping each other and working together to, you know, to do what we can to get to zero, to work together, but most of all, to show that Orlando is an amazing community, and I am so proud to represent it. I'm so proud of our city. Absolutely.
Eric, why don't you answer the same thing? Ladies and gentlemen, now, just if you could just give us maybe 10 more minutes of your attention, we can do that. They're taking time out of their evening to be here to present, so please, let's give them the respect that they're owed. Thank you. Eric, please answer that question. What do you want people to know about Orlando by the time this conference is here, by the end of the conference?
I would echo what Commissioner Sheehan said. I want people to feel the love that we feel when they come here, and it's just not theme parks, that there's a real heart to the city. I hope that they also leave the hotel and that they experience some of the nightlife that we have, all the different main streets, all the different parks, getting outside of the hotel and actually living, meeting people on the street, meeting people in our community. And I hope that there's an extension and opportunity in the conference for something like that.
And one of the things we are going to have to do is make ourselves, each one of us, as a host, as a greeter, we have to welcome them and show them, or else they are going to just stay in the hotel and just do things on iDrive or, you know.
Ambassador Monica.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I want to flip it up a little bit, and I want to ask you, before we leave, how can you use your influence to foster conversation at the congressional level about continuing HIV prevention and patient care funding?
Well, telling your personal stories is always what is most impactful in being able to influence and convince elected leaders to come over to your side of any issue. But it doesn't just stop in Congress. I think people are really frustrated on any issue, whether it's HIV or guns or affordable housing. They're frustrated that Congress and the legislature aren't getting anything done. Many of you are very well connected in the business community. What I would recommend doing is using your influence to not only talk to your political leaders, but ask your corporate leaders, what are they doing, or in many cases not doing, to address the epidemic of HIV? You know, I had a run-in earlier this year with one corporation by the name of Publix Supermarkets. When we all found out through the blogosphere that they were denying PrEP to their employees. And we know what the outcome was. They were essentially bullied into submission, and they reversed their policy, and now they're offering PrEP. But what's funny is that I was a speaker at the Tampa Business Journal's Business and Pride event last month, full of corporate leaders, and I told the story of what we did to Publix when we found out that they were denying PrEP to their employees.
Publix was there.
And they weren't there because they're terrible on our issues. But the interesting thing is, to the point of using your influence to affect change, I got a lot of feedback after my remarks, and they all said, hey, so we just want to let you know that many of the corporate leaders said after your speech that they went back and they double-checked their healthcare policies to make sure. They were like, oh my God, are we offering PrEP? Make sure that we do, and do it quietly. Use your influence.
Use your influence, use your vote. Do not forget that the August primary is the 28th. However, if you are registered independently, you can't vote. You have to be either Democrat or Republican, and I know we're not supposed to be talking about an election.
Except for in local
The
elections.
deadline is coming up, and
But
you
the
can also
deadline
vote
is
for
Monday,
county
July
commission
30th.
and school board and
Nonpartisan.
So,
yeah.
all right. Well, nonpartisan, yes, but when
Yes.
it comes to our governor and the things that we do want to make a change with, you got to be one or the other.
Absolutely.
NPA doesn't work either. Anna, that question goes to you very briefly. How can you use your influence to foster conversation?
Thank you for that question, and I know we're wrapping up, and so, I always like to tell folks that I'm a hero only if I have to be. I'm a facilitator first. And what I mean by that is, there we go. It's not about, and I think that's what it means to be a partner in work and to be an accomplice, is that it's not about you in the spotlight. Like, you're there to ensure that others understand their efficacy and their power in this work. And to echo Carlos's point about the power of storytelling. Stories can share values in ways numbers can't. And so when we are meeting with our elected officials at any level of government, it's so important to not only share stories, but ensure that you are lifting up the most impacted community members, right? No matter what the issue is, you want the directly impacted to be the main voice. So they feel the strength and power, that we're not making assumptions about what a community needs. We've actually done our part with a community-based approach to make sure the community is sharing to us what they need, right? And so I think it's very important that we always unpack our privilege in spaces, and we do our best to listen to our communities, to understand what their concerns are, and then just to facilitate their process in building power in their communities. We know that some of the best education programs are peer-to-peer, right? It's when the young black teen is teaching her cohort at her high school about prevention where it resonates the most. And so I know that for me, I'll be fighting for funding, both at a state level and a congressional level for these type of peer-to-peer programs. We know that the Trump administration has absolutely just destroyed family planning programs in the state of Florida and the country through Title X as an example. And Title X is the nation's family planning program, and they've removed the word contraception from those who apply for funding. I mean, it's just a complete ideology of convenience, and it's going to hurt Floridians across the state. So we have to do our part to hold our leaders accountable, follow their voting records. It is very easy for those of us in this room to track legislation, not so easy for others. So we need to do our part to also bring these issues to our patients. One of my biggest moments of pride at Planned Parenthood was inspiring our patients to share their stories. For our patients to go to Tallahassee and talk about their HIV status, to talk about their experience navigating sex ed or lack thereof, to talk about their decision to end a pregnancy as a mom. Those are the moments that legislators really opened up their hearts and their minds and started having empathy for others. And I feel so firmly that that's the only way we're going to change the narrative and change the culture around us.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This has been a very eye-opening evening. Would you not say that? Yes, yes, yes. If I can do a very quick shameless plug, myself and Andrea Dunn, we have these two nonprofits. I'm not asking you for anything. I just want to give a platform right now. One of the things that I did as a teen was made a hell of a lot of mistakes. I mean, a lot of mistakes. Like, I should be dead by now. Okay, those kind of big ones. And it was basically because there was no one to talk to. My parents didn't ask me how my day was. We didn't have conversation. So I'm talking like some major things that could have been life-changing. So I developed something called Let's Spill the Tea. And I actually have an event center now where we have these conversations. And I asked Nicole and I asked Jessica if they would come in and invite some other of your colleagues to share with a parent what they need to say to talk about sexuality with their children. They're not going to get it in school, and they probably wouldn't want them to get it there because it's been so long with not having it. But if a parent is taught the right things to say and what are the gestures? What's the vibe? What's the mood that I need to create? You'd be surprised what we could get done. So if you'll help me do that, if you'll help Dr. Dunn with her Let's Be Hive, it's Let's Be HIV Educated. And she talks with people about PrEP. She talks with you about the resources that are out there. So when you see us out here in the trenches, we're dealing with moms and teens, and now I'm dealing with dads and their daughters. How do you open up that discussion? Real talk all the time. That's what we have to do. So with that being said, we're wrapping up our panel. We want to thank Mr. Eric Rollins. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I want to just, don't forget to get your headdress tickets. It's Saturday, September 8th. So we're all going.
During the conference. Think about it.
Yeah.
You said September 8th?
Well, yeah.
So the conference is September 6th through 9th.
So, okay.
All right.
There you will see the real Orlando.
Hello.
Yeah.
Commissioner Patty, thank you very much, Patty. Anna, thank you very much for all that you shared with us this evening. It lets us see inside your head. Yeah.
Thank you.
I get your emails all the time, but seeing you face to face, give it to us. I love it. And Carlos, I'm in love with you, so thank you very much. All right.
I love you.
Hello, Facebook followers. If you're tuning in now, we are just wrapping up our 2018 benefit for the United States Conference on AIDS. It's very well attended. Great conversation, great food, great wine for a great cause. I hope you tuned in. If not, you can watch on our page. And we hope to see you at the conference September 6th through 9th, 2018 at the Hyatt Regency in Orlando.
Very well said, Jessica. Tonight we had a really great conversation about some of the things that we are really looking forward to showing the country, what Orlando has to offer, our resiliency, being so united, and really working together as a unit. But we also shared some things that we want to work towards and really strive towards with ending the epidemic. So having more, ending HIV criminalization laws, having more syringe access programs. So there's so many different things that we still need to accomplish, but I think today we really got the conversation started on how we're going to get there.
And before we go, we have one big announcement about a very special guest joining us this year for our opening reception.
Angina from RuPaul's Drag Race Season 1 will be our special guest performer on September 6th, which is a Thursday, at the USCA opening reception at the Hyatt Regency. It'll be getting started at 8 o'clock and party going on all night. So we hope to see you there and get the chance to meet and greet with Angina.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.